بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه سبحانك لا علم لنا. So Alhamdulillah, we are now at the halaqa al-sabi'a, or the seventh module, with a very interesting narrative concerning the grandfather of Rasulullah, grandfather,
Grandfather,
and
and
now
now we're going to actually come to the
father
father
of
of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, bidnillahi ta'ala. Okay, so why isn't this is not slides are not okay? Here we go. So Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So now okay, so Hashim, obviously the great grandfather of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. Now he passes through Yathrib. Now, as you know, Medina Munawwara, it was originally called Yathrib. Okay? And as we know that Hashim is the one who actually, institutionalized the two caravans to the south and to the north. Rihlat Ashita, it was safe, like in, Surah Al-Quraysh or Surah Al-Ilaf. Okay? So, in the course of these caravans, so Hashim passes through Yathrib on a summer caravan, and summer caravan would be going to Sham, to Balad al-Sham, to the north in Syria, in the area of Sham. So he proposes in Yathrib to Salma bint Amr, who was a very influential woman from the Khuzaa tribe of Bani Najjar. And this is very significant because we're going to see later on when Rasulullah comes to Medina Munawwara, who does he get down with? With his relatives from Bani Najjar, right? So from that time, actually the establishment of, the connection with Bani Najjar is taking place. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is setting up the whole scenario is getting from Tartib Rabbil Alameen. Okay. So Salma agrees, but with a condition. She says, okay, I'll marry you, but I'm not going to Makkah. I'm staying here in Medina. And not only that, whatever child is born, that child also has to stay here in Medina with me. It was okay. Fine. Because he's going back and forth anyway, a trader, so when he's going to Yathrib, so he'll be able to see his wife and any child which may come. Okay. Fine. So now a child is actually born, and the name of that child is actually, his name is Shayba. Shayba ibn Hashim, and he is later on to be known as Abdul Muttalib, which has also a very interesting story, and that's going to come very shortly. So he's born, and he grows up in Yathrib, and shows, what we call, he's very nabil, he's very, at a very early age, becomes apparent that this is a very exceptional child, and he's going to be a very exceptional, human being later on, which definitely takes place. So now his father, Hashim, dies in one of these caravans in Gaza, which is in Palestine, probably you would know that. And they say around 497 CE, Wallahu Alam, something around that time. Okay, now, if we remember that Hashim had three brothers, so Hashim, Abd Shams, Nofal, and Muttalib. Okay? And so if you remember the scented ones, Al-Mutayyibin, right? The ones who scented their hands and made the oath on the Kaaba, and right? Okay, so now who's going to take over? And we remember there was two factions. This is in the faction Mutayyibin, and then the Ahlaf, the opposing two tribes, or the other tribes that opposed them. Okay, so now Nofal and Abd Shams, these guys are very involved in their business. They've got no time to, run Quraysh or, look after Kaaba and all of that. They're busy making money. So They are not interested in taking the leadership of Quraysh. So it goes to Muttalib, the other, the only brother that was remaining brother who was ready to take that leadership. So the leadership of the scented ones, al-Mutayyibin, it falls to now Muttalib, al-Muttalib, the brother of Hashim. Now, so as we mentioned, the other two brothers were busy in business. They didn't want any part of that. So now, al-Muttalib, he has his own sons, right? Obviously. And now, in the meantime, his nephew is growing up in Yathrib, and as we said, this boy is really exceptional. And of course, being his uncle, so he's seeing from time to time, and in the caravans probably they're meeting, and so he really takes a liking to his nephew. And now, he's going to have to choose a successor who's going to, take on the leadership. Now he's got his own sons, and that's who it generally would go to, right? But he prefers his nephew over his sons, and that's going to cause trouble, right? And it did, and it does. It is going to cause a lot of political strife, which is about to take place here. So now Al-Muttalib travels to Yathrib. He goes to Yathrib, and he wants to bring his nephew back to Makkah. But as you remember, so his mother made the condition that no child is going to, the child of Hashim is going to stay in Yathrib. He's not going to Makkah. So now, Al-Muttalib, his first, major act of diplomacy is going to have to, start here, regarding, the father of Shayba, right? Okay. So he goes and he puts in his, whatever, and he was successful, and so he convinced his mother to hand him over and let him grow up in Makkah. Okay. So he goes back with his uncle, right? And they ride back to Makkah, and Al-Muttalib is riding, and then Shayba, the son of Hashim, Shayba ibn Hashim, his nephew, is riding on the back. So now the people in Makkah, they've never seen, they don't know this is the son of Hashim. They just see this young fellow who's riding behind Al-Muttalib. So they think this must be his slave, right? And he's not his slave, he's his nephew. So hence, when they came to Makkah, so the people looked at it, they said, oh, this must be Abdul Muttalib. So he becomes Abdul Muttalib. So the name stuck, and he remained. And even, we'll see, even during the time of Rasulullah, he's always mentioned, his name is never mentioned. He's always mentioned as Abdul Muttalib. Ya ibn Abdul Muttalib. And Nabi Rasulullah said, Anna ibn Abdul Muttalib, Anna Nabi la kadhib, Anna ibn Abdul Muttalib. So that's the beginning of Abdul Muttalib. So as we said, Quraysh hadn't seen him, so that stuck. Okay. So Abdul Muttalib, Shayba ibn Hashim, now known as Abdul Muttalib, remains with his uncle until his uncle dies. His uncle also dies in a caravan, however, in Yemen. Okay, now, we said there's going to be political strife, right? Definitely. So now what happens is that the other, the other brother, or the other brother of Hashim, Nofal, right? So now he takes the opportunity that this is the time to seize power. So Al-Muttalib is out of the way. His nephew is now just, coming into power. So in the meantime, we'll just, put a squash on that whole scenario, and we'll snatch the power. So he grabs control of Quraysh, and since he's quite senior, an elder, so he was able to do that. So he wrested the reins of Quraysh, and now he's in charge. Now, of course, Abdul Muttalib is not just going to sit back and watch that happen and be a pacifist in the scenario. So he's going to take full action. So what he does is he tries to arbitrate. Hey, this is not what's happening. My uncle has maybe the successor, and I'm supposed to take over. So, but nobody is ready to get in between and negotiate. So what does he do? So he sends the message to his relatives, his mother's relatives, his uncles in Medina and Yathrib, and they were a very powerful tribe, right? He said, look, there's an issue here, so come to my assistance. So 80 of them, get on their horses, and they come to Makkah, and they say, okay, nothing doing, and they snatch the reins of the power again, and it's handed over to Al-Muttalib, Abdul Muttalib. Okay, now, in the meantime, Abdul Shams, the tribe of Abdul Shams, they joined Nawfal in resistance against the tribes of between Hashim and Muttalib, right? So we can see that strife from that era, that's going to actually, filter down, or that's going to trickle down right to the time of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. And we're going to see that these tribes of Abdul Shams and Nawfal, they are going to continue this strife with Bani Hashim and Bani al-Muttalib. And this is going to continue right up into Islam, or when Nabi Sallallahu is sent. And for example, Abu Sufyan, Uqba ibn Abi Mu'ayt, and others, they were from Bani Abd Shams. So that those previous alliances, right? So those came to play also when Nabi Sallallahu came onto the horizon. So those were probably also factors that also, motivated, the animosity from those people from those particular tribes. Whereas Bani Hashim, Bani Abdul, and Bani Al-Muttalib remain connected. Therefore, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the progeny, when we say the progeny of Bani Hashim, so that progeny also in some of the ahkam, the Bani al-Muttalib are connected, because Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentioned, because Banu Hashim and Bani al-Muttalib were together in Jahiliyyah and Islam. And we're going to see later on, when the boycott takes place, these two tribes remain in alliance, whereas Abd Shams and Nawfal, they remain back, and they're fine with that boycott. In fact, they're probably very happy about that. Okay, back to our scenario here. So we just mentioned about that, how Bani Muttalib and Bani Hashim, they remain, aligned together and aligned with Rasulullah, even though many of them had not accepted Islam. But still, that tribal alliance is a very powerful thing, and we're going to see this, coming to play again and again. And it's very important in tribal systems that the tribes, the leaders, their history, their ansab. Therefore, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was a very, very successful diplomat in that, because he was one of the most knowledgeable of ansab. So he knew all the lineages, and he knew the stories connected to those lineages. And so when he would meet people in Hajj, oh, you're from tribe so-and-so, and your great-grandfather and your great-great-grandfather, and they did this and they did that. Oh, you're great. Oh, yeah, great. So the people are now ready to listen. So this is the tamheed, as it were, the sort of prelude to now get in the door and now present their da'wah. Okay. Now, Khuzā, if you remember Khuzā, they were in charge of Makkah, before Qusay, got the reins of Makkah, and the Quraysh became prominent. So Khuzā are now on the outskirts, on their surrounding areas in Hijaz, and they're watching all of this political, drama unfolding, and so they're saying, okay, what do we do? So they are watching carefully, and they see it would be politically expedient for them to come into, a pact with Bani Hashim and Bani al-Muttalib. So they join that camp, which is also going to be very significant. And also, Khuzā go into a pact with Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and that's why Fath Makkah, was actually initiated through Khuzā, because Khuzā was attacked by Bani Bakr in Haram, and they were killed very mercilessly. And so that stems back from that old alliance, right? So this is why it's, to us to understand, develops to have more clarity in these, these scenarios that are going to unfold. Having the history of that is going to be very helpful to understand, the emotions, involved, and alliances, and the sort of, tendency to take alliance with this group rather than that group. Okay? So now Abdul Muttalib comes to be regarded as a great leader. In fact, he becomes to be, regarded as a greater leader than his own father, right? Because he really did some astounding things, and we're going to see some very astounding things that are going to happen very soon. So now Abdul Muttalib, he has this very close affinity with Kaaba. He likes to always be within the Kaaba or around the Kaaba. And in fact, in the night, he sleeps in the Hijr, which is, that area where we go around it in Tawaf. It's where the fence is, And it's claimed, and this goes back from, the riwayat from before Jahiliyyah, that's actually where Ismail alayhi salam and his mother, they're both buried there. Okay, so Abdul Muttalib has this habit that he likes to sleep there. So in his sleep one night, somebody says to him, go and dig Taiba. Dig up this Taiba. And so he asks, what is this Taiba? And he wakes up. So he has no clue what's going on. The next night he has another dream. And so another voice, or the voice says to him again, that you dig, he gives another name. It was 4 different names. I forget all those names that he mentions. So he mentions these various names, and then every night for 4 nights consecutively, he gets this dream that dig such and such, dig such and such, and then ultimately dig Zamzam. So now if you remember, when Jurham were leaving Makkah, they were leaving, not happily. And so they buried Zamzam, they buried all the treasures of the Kaaba, and nobody knew about that after that. And everybody forgot about that. And so nobody was even aware that there was Zamzam. Maybe they might have heard, but it was like there was no mention of it. So even the name Zamzam, what's Zamzam? So then ultimately, it's mentioned to him in the dream that it's said to him that you dig up this well, and there's poetry that's mentioned. It's kind of like poetry. It's mentioned in Ibn Hisham and other works of Sirah. So in a very poetic way, it's mentioned to him that this is the well, it's the inheritance of your great-grandfather Ismail, and it is such a well that it will never dry, and it will never, be unpure, and it will provide all of the Hujjaj and the pilgrims with water and in it. So now, okay, so where is this? So it's mentioned, that it's the place between al-farthi wa dam, between the intestines and the blood, where the crow is pecking, in the village of the ants. What does this mean, So, long story short, it comes to manifest that what is being referred to is that the two sanams, that they have. What was the name of those two? That they were on actually, near to the Kaaba, huh? Naila, no, not Naila, and what is the other one? Huh? Huh? Yeah, Isaf something, Isaf or something like that, and Naila. Those are the two that were caught in the Kaaba that actually were fornicating in the Kaaba, and they turned into stone. Then they ultimately put them up as a sort of a, warning, and then people forgot what was the real story, and then they became idols. So, in any case, between these two idols, that's where the Quraysh used to sacrifice the animals for their aliha, for their gods, particularly for Hubal, was the main one that they had put in the Kaaba. Okay, so that's the area, and then he goes over in that area and he finds there's a crow pecking, and near where the crow is pecking, there's a little anthill. Says, okay, this is the place. So he informs Quraysh, that this is I'm going to be doing this, and I'm going to be, digging, and so he starts digging between the two idols. Now Quraysh says, hey, wait a minute, you can't dig between our idols, and so they get kind of, they get unhappy about that. So then he had his son. Now at that point he only has one son, Harith, and so he was also helping. He says, okay, stand these guys off, because I'm going to do this. So when Quraysh sees that, so they let him go. and he digs. So now as he's digging, he comes to there's what they call a toa. There's a big stone or something which is actually now covering, the well, and it's covering the treasures and all the gold and silver and the different things that that they had placed in there. So now he actually comes to it, and he says takbir, Allahu Akbar. And so now Quraysh come and they say, oh, and then they uncover it, and lo and behold, those treasures of the Kaaba and also the well of Zamzam. And so Quraysh say, okay, great. So, we're also partners. Abdul Muttalib says, nothing doing. This is mine. I've been the one, instructed to take care of this, and it's mine, and I'm responsible for this. And now we can well understand that's also going to cause a big problem. So we have some more political discord here. Okay, now, so they're about to, hey, so they come up with a solution. The solution is that we'll go to the soothsayer in, what is called Ashraf al-Sham. It's a place, on the way towards Bilad al-Sham. And there's some woman there as a soothsayer. She's a kahina, and, they'll sort it out. She'll sort it out for you. What should be done. And actually So what Abdul Muttalib says, when Quraysh is really, getting hot in there, he said, okay, bring me, someone who, we can negotiate and who will be a judge in this matter. He's a very, for justice, he was a very sort of just fellow, and he was very equitable. So they said, okay, that's a good idea. So they come up with this solution. Okay, we'll go to that soothsayer, because they used to, do everything by divining arrows and all that kind of stuff. They would, okay. So they went to her and they said, okay, this is the thing, or they were on their way and they were going to tell her, So on the way, there's different riwayats, but this riwayat actually, Ibn Hisham, narrates this riwayat from Ibn Ishaq, who narrates it with his chain of narration right up to Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu. So in this narration, it basically mentions that, okay, they're on their way to this place, Ashraf al-Sham. And in those days, the road was like, there was nothing there. Mafa was desert, nothing. So they ran out of water. At least, the Abdul Muttalib and his contingent. And actually, from all the tribes of Quraysh, they had, some individuals representing the various tribes. So you've got this huge qafila. Now, Abdul Muttalib, his contingent, they now run out of water. So they said, okay, somebody give us water. So everybody said, sorry. They would give you all kinds of ikram and give you all kinds of, hospitality. But when it's life and death, hands up. Because they said, we give you water and then we're going to be faced with the same situation you're in. So nobody's prepared to give them water. And without water, what's going to happen? That's it. So now, the group of Abdul Muttalib, okay, what do we do? So he said, okay, here's what we do. Every one of us, dig a hole, dig your own grave, and when any one of us dies, then we'll all bury him. Until only one is left, and then because when people are going to die, so that somebody, they're going to leave stuff and whatever. So for us to deal with, only one of our tribe, ultimately, it's going to be easier than dealing with all of them at a time. Very interesting, viewpoint here, So he says, so they said, oh, okay, nothing else. We're going to die anyway. So that sounds like a pretty good, a pretty good solution. I mean, that's the best we can do. So in the meantime, they're waiting to all die and get buried, one after the other. So then it strikes Abdul Muttalib that, wait a minute, we are actually, and it's amazing, even though they were mushriks, right? But their connection, now this is very amazing, it's never ceased to amaze me. Even though they're mushriks and all that, but they have this very close tie to the Kaaba. And they're actually, even though they are not muwahids, but they are still the closest people around with Tawheed. Shaykh Abu Hassan al-Nadwi, rahmatullahi, in the beginning of his Sirah Nabawiyah, he mentions, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala choose the Arabs, of all people? Why not the Persians or the Romes or Indians or Chinese or anything, more civilized people? So no, but these people, they had amazing qualities, and they were actually the closest people to Tawheed. Okay? So what he says now, anyway, so Abdul Muttalib, he says what? He says, we are, this is connected to Kaaba. This whole issue is, connected to Kaaba, and we're, trying to sort out this thing for Zamzam, and obviously that's, for khidmat of the Hujjaj. I mean, it's not like we're in it for ourselves. I mean, he didn't say all of that, but I'm just, the thought process that probably was there. So he says, okay. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to help us. Tawakkul. He said, so let's go, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will do something for us. Okay. So they said, okay, that's better than waiting here and dying, right? So they all get on their horses or their camels, and they start taking off. Now, where the hoof of the camel, according to this riwayat, the hoof of the camel of Abdul Muttalib strikes the earth, from that place water starts gushing out. Allah. And so now they've got water. Now the rest of the Quraysh also come. Oh, water for everybody. They say, yeah, water for everybody. And so everybody filled their water bags and all of their stuff. And so everybody's got water. So now Quraysh, they look at the situation, they reflect on it, they say, hey, you know what? This is the pretty heavy sign. I think Abdul Muttalib has a point. I mean, he's the one that got the dream, and now, this water gushing off. Okay. We will concede that, yes, he's a special person, and he's definitely, these are signs. So, okay, you've got control of Zamzam. It's yours. Go ahead. Let's go back. So actually, they never went to the soothsayer, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided the whole thing. And so now they get back to Makkah. And back in Makkah, now we're going to have another very interesting story, but because our time has run out, we'll save that story for the next episode, inshallah. A very, very interesting story. So, Jazakumullah khair for attending those. We actually had some attendees physically this time. Wonderful. And we had online, any questions, any comments?
Yeah, one question.
Yeah.
They're asking how come the location of Zamzam is lost if it's so close to the Kaaba?
So probably that question was not with us when we talked about that, because hundreds of years previously, when Jurham, was expelled by Khuzā from the custodianship of Kaaba, after they started, becoming tyrant and all that. So they were forced to leave when Khuzā, took over. So what happened is that Jurham covered it over Zamzam, covered it up, because they didn't want, if we can't have it, nobody else is going to have it either. So they covered it up, and all the, there was things that people used to bring and gift to the Kaaba. There was gold and silver and all types of things, and relics from the previous history, etc. So they took all of that stuff and they put it in the well, and they covered it all over and didn't leave any trace, so that nobody would actually find it. So when Khuzā came in, where is it? Nobody knows. At the same time, as time goes on, not only its place, but even its mention was forgotten. So over the centuries, I mean, this is not like, last year. This is like over the centuries. So now the whole, even the mention of Zamzam, is like, it's gone into the horizon. So nobody even knows about it. So therefore, he didn't even, Zamzam, dig Zamzam. What's Zamzam? No clue. Is that clear?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No, you mentioned it before, but where were they getting water from?
Yeah, so, and that's also an issue, because Zamzam was the only water at one point. But after that, they started digging, and and in fact, Ibn Hisham, he mentions Abar, al-Arab al-Ahl Makkah. So actually they had, they started digging wells, and they discovered water in other places. So the importance of Zamzam also, it's sort of, it was a symbolic thing, but they didn't really need that water as they did previously. So that, not needing it and then covered up, so it was, even its mention was lost. Wallahu a'lam. Okay, folks? Jazakumullah khair for attending, and inshallah, and hopefully next Saturday, inshallah, we'll continue with this narrative, inshallah, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله